Hiyo bill iko alcoholics.
Okay.
Alcoholics mnaona hapo? Sugar gani? Iko na nawa yote. Alcoholics. Hiyo bill nasema iko na nawa yote. Hiyo sugar. Sugar umera. Sugar, sukari. Sukari. Sugar, sukari umera.
Sasa iko na tona magani. One, two. Sound check. 1 2 3 4 5 5 4 3 2 1.
Hapa niko set mimi. Na hii ile nyingine ya nini ya Kiswahili ilienda wapi prayer? Mimi naona it's never here. In fact, I never see it.
Kwa matangazo ya moja kwa moja kutoka Bunge la Taifa. Shukran sana wenzangu Boni Musambi na Cynthia Anyango. Na msikilizaji, Jumatano asubuhi huwa ni kikao ambacho kimetengewa hoja na miswada ya kibinafsi ya wabunge.
Sound check.
Miswada 14 ya wabunge imeorodheshwa kwenye ratiba ya leo. Mswada wa kwanza ambao wabunge wanatarajiwa kuendelea kujadili ni mswada wa mbunge wa Mugirango Kusini Silvana Sosoro wa kurekebisha sheria ya kudhibiti vileo. Mswada huu unakusudia kurekebisha sheria hii ili kumpa waziri husika mamlaka ya kubaini wakati wa kupeperusha matangazo ya vileo ili kuwalinda watoto na waraibu wa pombe wanaojirekebisha tabia dhidi ya athari za matangazo kama hayo. Kamati ya bunge lote inatarajiwa kudurusu mswada nambari 68 wa sekta ya sukari. Mswada huu uliwasilishwa na Mheshimiwa Silvanus Osoro. Mbunge wa kaunti ya Busia Florence Mutua amewasilisha mswada wa kurekebisha kifungu cha 90 cha katiba ili kiwiane na sheria ya uchaguzi nambari 35 na kubadili muda wa vyama vya kisiasa kuwasilisha orodha za uteuzi kutoka siku 45 kabla ya uchaguzi hadi siku 21 baada ya uchaguzi mkuu. Pia kuna mswada wa mbunge wa Kikuyu Kimani Ichung'wa wa kurekebisha sheria za leba. Mswada huu bisha sheria nambari 411A ya sekta hii ili kumwezesha mtu mwenye biashara ya mawasiliano ya simu kuweza kufungua biashara nyingine na kutenganisha biashara hizo mbili. Pia unawataka wenye biashara za mawasiliano ya simu kuwekeza kwenye muundo msingi wa mawasiliano ya simu. Vile vile kuna mswada nambari 31 wa mwaka 2019 kuhusu halmashauri ya chakula na dawa. Mswada huu uliwasilishwa na Mheshimiwa Robert Pukose. Vile vile wabunge wataendelea kujadili mswada nambari 79 wa mwaka 2019 uliofanywa marekebisho kuhusu ajira. Mswada huu umetayarishwa na mbunge maalum Gideon Keter. Pia kuna mswada wa mbunge wa Imenti Kaskazini Abdul Rahim Dawood wa kurekebisha sheria ya shirika la kuweka bima za mikopo. Mswada huu, msikilizaji na mtazamaji wa runinga ya KBC Channel 1, unakusudia kurekebisha sehemu ya 28 ya sheria ya bima ya mikopo ya mwaka 2012 ili kuongeza kiasi cha fedha ambacho mtu anaweza kulipwa na shirika la kuweka bima za mikopo nchini ikiwa ana akiba katika shirika ama taasisi iliyofilisika. Naye mbunge wa Kimilili Didmas Barasa amewasilisha mswada wa kurekebisha sheria ya malipo ya uzeeni ili kuratibu muda ambao mtu anastahili kupokea malipo ya uzeeni baada ya kustaafu. Aidha, kuna mswada wa mbunge wa Ndhiwa Martin Peters Owino kuhusu wahudumu wa afya wa kijamii. Mswada huu unalenga kubuni mfumo wa kisheria wa usajili, mafunzo na utoaji leseni kwa wahudumu wa afya wa kijamii na pia kubuni baraza la kudhibiti shughuli za taaluma hiyo. Vile wabunge wataendelea kushughulikia mswada wa mbunge wa Nakuru mjini Mashariki David Gikaria wa kurekebisha sheria kuhusu halmashauri ya kitaifa ya ujenzi. Na msikilizaji na mtazamaji wa runinga ya KBC Channel 1, ikiwa hivi sasa ni dakika 31 baada ya saa 3, naibu spika Moses Cheboya anaingia ukumbini kuashiria kwamba ndiye atakayeongoza kikao cha sasa kuambatana na kanuni za bunge la taifa. Moja kwa moja anaelekea kuchukua nafasi yake katika ukumbi, ila kwanza ataongoza wabunge kwa maombi. Hii ni KBC Radio Taifa, hii ni KBC Channel 1. Tupate maombi.
Almighty God, who in your wisdom and goodness have appointed the offices of leaders and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of the people, we beseech you to behold with your burden favor as your servants, whom you have been pleased to call to performance of important trust in this republic. Let your blessings descend upon us here assembled. Grant that we treat and consider all matters that shall come under deliberations in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country, and of those whose interests you've committed to the church. Amen.
Taifa punde si punde atabainisha iwapo idadi ya kutosha wabunge imetimizwa au bado.
Do not have the requisite quorum. Therefore, I order the bell to be rung for 10 minutes.
Inahitajika ya wabunge kuambatana na kanuni za bunge la taifa kabla ya bunge kuanzisha rasmi shughuli za asubuhi hii. Kumbuka msikilizaji, ni wabunge 50 kati ya wabunge wote 349 wa bunge la 12 ambao wanahitajika kuwa ukumbini ili kikao kiweze kuanza rasmi, ikiwa hivi sasa ni dakika 33 baada ya saa 3 saa zetu za kanda ya Afrika Mashariki. Wabunge wanaendelea kuingia mmoja baada ya mwingine, na mwana mbunge wa Emuru wa Dikiri Yohana Ngeno ameingia ukumbini, na msikilizaji ni katika kutumainia kwamba idadi ya kutosha wabunge itatimizwa katika muda usiokuwa mrefu ili kikao cha sasa kiweze kuanza rasmi. Wabunge wataendelea kushughulikia mswada wa mbunge wa Nakuru mjini Mashariki David Gikaria wa kurekebisha sheria kuhusu halmashauri ya kitaifa ya ujenzi. Mswada huu unalenga kurekebisha sheria nambari 41 ya mwaka 2011 ili kuondolea malipo ya ada wa wafanyabiashara chipukizi wanaoanzisha biashara za ujenzi ambao ni wanawake, vijana ama watu wenye ulemavu. Kadhalika kuna mswada wa mbunge wa Nandi Hills Alfred Keter wa kurekebisha sheria kuhusu bodi ya dawa na sumu. Mswada huu unadhamiria kurekebisha sheria hii ili kuzuia uuzaji ama utoaji dawa kwa mtu bila idhini kwa maandishi ya afisa wa afya aliyesajiliwa. Bunge pia litaendelea kujadili mswada wa mbunge wa Garissa mjini Aden Duale wa kurekebisha sheria kuhusu matumizi yasiyofaa ya tarakilishi na uhalifu wa mtandaoni. Mswada huu unakusudia kurekebisha sheria hii ili kuzuia kubadilishana video za ngono kupitia vyombo vya habari vya kijamii ama kutumia vyombo vya habari vya kijamii kwa shughuli za kigaidi ama itikadi kali za kidini. Hatimaye kuna mswada wa marekebisho ya sheria kuhusu sekta ya afya ambao umewasilishwa na Mheshimiwa Mwambu Mabonga. Na msikilizaji, ikiwa umefungulia redio yako kwa mara ya kwanza au ikiwa umefungulia runinga yako ya KBC Channel 1 kwa mara ya kwanza, Hiki ni kikao cha bunge la taifa, kikao cha siku ya Jumatano asubuhi, ambacho kwa kawaida huwa kimetengewa hoja na miswada ya kibinafsi ya wabunge, na asubuhi hii kuna miswada 14 ya wabunge ambayo imeorodheshwa kushughulikiwa katika ukumbi wa bunge la taifa. Kikao cha sasa kinaongozwa na naibu spika Moses Cheboi, ambaye pia ni mbunge wa Kuresoi Kaskazini, ambaye tayari amechukua nafasi yake katika ukumbi wa bunge na ameagiza kengele kukirizwa kwa muda ili kuwawezesha wabunge zaidi kuingia ukumbini na kujaza idadi inayohitajika kuambatana na kanuni za bunge la 12. Idadi hiyo, msikilizaji, ni idadi ya wabunge 50 kati ya wabunge wote 349 ili bunge la taifa liweze kutekeleza shughuli zake jinsi inavyohitajika kulingana na kanuni za bunge la taifa. Kumbuka msikilizaji, majukumu ya bunge la taifa ni pamoja na uwakilishi wa maeneo bunge mbalimbali, utathmini wa utendakazi wa serikali, hali kadhalika utunzi wa sheria. Dakika 37 baada ya saa 3 unaendelea kutazama runinga ya KBC Channel 1, hali kadhalika kusikiliza KBC Radio Taifa, na kukudokezea ni kwamba kuna miswada 14 ya wabunge ambayo inatarajiwa kushughulikiwa asubuhi hii, na mswada wa kwanza ambao umeorodheshwa ni mswada wa mbunge wa Mugirango Kusini Silvana Sosoro wa kurekebisha sheria ya kudhibiti vileo. Mswada huu unakusudia kurekebisha sheria hii ili kumpa waziri husika mamlaka ya kubaini wakati wa kupeperushwa kwa matangazo ya vileo, ili kuwalinda watoto na waraibu wa pombe wanaojirekebisha tabia dhidi ya athari za matangazo kama hayo. Kamati ya bunge lote asubuhi hii inatarajiwa kudurusu mswada nambari 69 wa sekta ya sukari. Ni mswada ambao uliwasilishwa na Mheshimiwa Silvana Sosoro, na mbunge wa kaunti ya Busia Florence Mutua amewasilisha mswada wa kurekebisha kifungu cha 90 cha katiba ili kiwiane na sheria ya uchaguzi nambari 35 na kubadili muda wa vyama vya kisiasa kuwasilisha orodha za uteuzi kutoka siku 45 kabla ya uchaguzi hadi siku 21 baada ya uchaguzi mkuu. Pia kuna mswada wa mbunge wa Kikuyu Kimani Ichung'wa wa kurekebisha sheria za leba. Mswada huu unakusudia kurekebisha sheria hizi ili kuratibu kanuni zinazohitajika kwa vyama vya wafanyakazi kabla ya kuitisha mgomo katika sekta zinazotoa huduma muhimu. Na vile msikilizaji, asubuhi hii kuna maswali kadhaa ambapo mbunge wa Kuria Mashariki Marwa Maisori anatarajiwa kumuuliza waziri wa michezo, utamaduni na turathi kuhusu hali au mikakati iliyowekwa kuhakikisha kwamba lugha za kiasili zinazozungumzwa miongoni mwa jamii 79 hapa nchini zinalindwa. Na vile kuna mbunge wa Awendo Walter Owino ambaye ana swali kwa waziri wa kilimo, ufugaji na uvuvi. Anataka kujua mikakati ambayo imewekwa ili kusaidia zaidi ya watu milioni 1.5 wanaokumbwa na ukame ambao kwa sasa wanakabiliwa na njaa hapa nchini. Na ikiwa msikilizaji umefungulia redio yako kwa mara ya kwanza au umefungulia runinga yako kwa mara ya kwanza, kuna shughuli inayoendelea katika ukumbi wa bunge la taifa kwa sababu idadi ya kutosha wa bunge haijatimizwa ili bunge liweze kuanzisha rasmi shughuli zake. Mbunge wa Ainabkoi William Chepkut ana swali kwa waziri wa maji, usafi na unyunyiziaji mashamba maji, ambapo anataka waziri aelezee kuhusu hali ya utekelezaji wa mpango wa kunyunyizia mashamba maji wa Tot Koloa.
We are just short of about 12 members, I think. So I order the bell to continue ringing for an extra 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Ya kutosha haijatimizwa, na hivyo basi naibu spika agiza kengele kukirizwa kwa muda wa dakika 5 zaidi kuwezesha wabunge zaidi kuingia ukumbini na kujaza idadi inayohitajika ya wabunge. Mbunge wa Ainabkoi William Chepkut anataka waziri wa maji, usafi na unyunyiziaji mashamba maji kuelezea kuhusu hali ya utekelezaji wa mradi wa unyunyiziaji mashamba maji wa Tot Kolowa kwenye mpaka kati ya kaunti ya Baringo na Elgeyo Marakwet, ambao gharama yake inakisiwa kuwa shilingi milioni 245. Na mbunge wa Emuhaya Omboko Milemba atauliza waziri wa usalama wa kitaifa, ambapo anataka waziri aelezee kuhusu hali ya uchunguzi kuhusiana na kisa cha hivi majuzi cha kupigwa risasi kwa wanafunzi 3 na maafisa wa polisi.
No members other than whips are allowed to step out of the chamber.
Omboko Milemba anataka waziri wa usalama wa kitaifa kuelezea kuhusu hali ya uchunguzi wa kisa cha hivi majuzi cha kupigwa risasi kwa wanafunzi 3 ambapo walipigwa risasi na maafisa wa polisi. Wanafunzi hao ni Alfred Odaba Kutwa wa shule ya msingi ya Esalwa, Eric Munala Julius wa kidato cha kwanza katika shule ya upili ya St. Peter's Itumbu, na Geoffrey Obwanga ambaye ni mwanafunzi wa darasa la 7 katika shule ya msingi ya Itumbu. Shule hizo zote ziko katika eneo bunge la Emuhaya. Vile vile anataka waziri kuelezea hatua ambazo serikali inachukua ili kukabiliana na maafisa wa polisi waliohusika katika kisa hicho cha kupiga risasi wanafunzi hao ambao walikuwa katika kituo cha polisi cha Luanda.
Have the quorum, so business will begin.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Order, members, take your seats. Honorable members, under Standing Order 225, 2B, it requires the Speaker to report to the House any petitions other than those presented by a member. Further, Article 119 of the Constitution provides for the right of any person to petition Parliament to consider any matters within its authority, including petitioning the House to enact, amend, or repeal any legislation. In this regard, honorable members, I wish to report to the House that my office has received a petition from several citizens led by one Susan Wangoi Gashago of PO Box 156 Muranga, calling for the abolishment of the requirement for police clearance certificate as well as sealing of criminal records after 5th year of the offense. The petitioners aver the requirement by the employers for job seekers to produce police clearance certificate is not a statutory requirement, but one which infringes on the constitutional rights to privacy since it exposes the job seekers' past records. They argue that such exposure is unfair since the job seeker might have committed an offense as an ignorant minor or may have been wrongly convicted and jailed for offenses that he or she never committed, particularly in absence of good defense. Further, the petitioners view this requirement as a discriminatory one, since most of the employers may use police clearance certificate as a basis for disqualifying job seekers having records purported to be criminal, irrespective of their qualifications. Honorable members, the petitioners are convinced that employing a person with a past criminal record can demonstrate diversity, inclusion, and social responsibility, and act as an avenue for their rehabilitation, thereby reducing their likelihood of them relapsing back to crime. In addition, they assert that the portrayal of court case details on the police clearance certificates amount to discrimination on grounds of conscience, since it reminds a job seeker of their past. In this regard, they provide reference to the U.S. state of Indiana, as well as the United Kingdom, as examples of jurisdictions where certain misdemeanors and non-violent felonies are expunged from the offender's record after several years. Consequently, honorable members, the petitioners seek the intervention of this House to consider abolishing the requirement for police clearance certificate by employers, as well as closing and permanently obliterating criminal records 5 years after conviction. Honorable members, pursuant to provisions of Standing Order 2271, these petitions stand committed to the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs. The committee is requested to consider the petition and report its finding to the House and to the petitioners in accordance with the Standing Order 2272. I thank you, honorable members. I see seeking intervention. Do they want to speak to this one? Okay, so we'll start with the Honorable Mbui.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I think that petition is really a timely one. I think because what happens is that when people commit offenses, there is punishment that is meted out so that they can be corrected. And sometimes people even end up going to jail so that because jails are correctional centers, after they have served their term, there should just be a short period within which now they are rehabilitated back to society. And I think it's a fact that a lot of employers in Kenya today insist on the certificate of good conduct. And therefore, it basically means that one who has committed an offense, even if it is 20, 30, 40 years ago, would be punished as a result of that. So I think there is a double jeopardy. It means that people can be punished, they serve as a jail term, and then afterwards they are unable to be employed, so they cannot be corrected. So, Mr. Speaker, I think it is timely, and I think I support that petition.
Honorable Dawood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to join my colleague in supporting this petition. Mr. Speaker, we cannot do double jeopardy in the sense that somebody has already been jailed or convicted, and then again, when somebody is going to look for a job or to fend for himself, and then again, it is written on the certificate of good conduct. So, Mr. Speaker, there should be that anybody who has been convicted for less than maybe 2 or 3 years, or who has been fined less than 100,000, should not be put on the certificate of good conduct that he has a criminal conviction. Okay. But otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I support the petition.
Speaker, thank you. I also wish to support the petition, Mr. Speaker, because, you know, Mr. Speaker, when we ask from our youths, especially those ones who are upcoming, for those particular clearance certificates, and yet even politicians and most of the leaders in this country go to occupy big offices without, and they are criminals, known criminals, Mr. Speaker. Why are we denying these youths positions just because of some clearance certificates? And I don't think it's very necessary. So we need to remove those clearance and things yenye wanaulizwa so that wanafunzi, so that our youths get employed, Mr. Speaker. I think we need to remove those.
You are very emotional about this.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. You know, I've seen so many criminals, including even me, a potential criminal, including me, a potential criminal, because I've been on record being arrested severally. But I still find my way to Parliament. I still find my way to serious opportunities. But why are we denying these young people just because of some certificates? Okay. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
All right. Wakungu Wamalwa, Doctor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a very serious petition. And Article 119 is very clear, Mr. Speaker, that any Kenyan can petition this House to look into a matter. Mr. Speaker, I'm not aware that the clearance certificate is mandatory. I think many organizations use it discretionary. And again, Mr. Speaker, it is a clearance certificate among others. So as I request the JLAC to look into this matter, they must do it in a way that they advise us on the best way forward. Mr. Speaker, even members of parliament here, when you go for a clearance to run for office, you are required to present a clearance certificate, Mr. Speaker, which is among others. So to me, I'm humbly requesting the committee to look at it objectively. But in a way, Mr. Speaker, it is true what my other colleagues have said. You are supposed to have gone through, maybe if it's prison, to have corrected yourselves. So it will only provide a basis to the employer, Mr. Speaker, to be aware that you have a history of criminality, and they'll be able to look at the trend, indeed where you've changed or not. But in my own observation, it is not mandatory. It is used among others. And to that extent, Mr. Speaker, I leave it for the committee to do justice and bring it on this floor of the House. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, Honorable Iringo Kubai.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to comment on this petition, Mr. Speaker. I support the petition, Mr. Speaker, because once somebody has been convicted of a crime and you have been punished for the same, it should not hang on your neck all the days of your life, Mr. Speaker. There are those people who happen to be jailed or to be convicted because maybe of improper judgment, or even somebody has been implicated on something which you didn't do. And if at all, Mr. Speaker, if you are you are charged and you have taken the fingerprints that the police officer has placed, and then those fingerprints are kept permanently, it will hamper even your progress. And if we talk of jails to be a correction place, then once you are corrected, you can be given a chance to start a life afresh without anything being, without being followed by the past, which becomes a problem to the future of that person. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, I think the rest of the members will speak to the next one. So let's now go to the member for Galole, the Honorable Haribai, or Hiribai.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a petition regarding degazettement of 2,000 acres of Hola irrigation scheme land for expansion of Hola town. I, the undersigned, on behalf of residents of Galole constituency in Tana River County, draw the attention of the House to the following. Number one, that Hola irrigation scheme in Tana River County was gazetted on the 26th of April 1963 and covers an area approximately 12,630 acres. Number two, that the scheme was initially used as a settlement scheme to settle thousands of Mau Mau freedom fighters and residents of Tana River in general in the 1960s. Number three, that the physical location of Hola irrigation scheme at the heart of Hola town has over the years proven to be disadvantageous to area residents in view of the fact that it continues to block the much needed expansion of Hola town, which is the headquarters of Tana River County. Number four, that in a bid to address this long-standing challenge, officials of national government and as well as the representatives of Tana River County government, area members of parliament, the National Land Commission and other stakeholders met in Hola town on the 15th of July 2021 and mutually agreed to degazette 2,000 acres in the southern and eastern parts of the scheme to facilitate expansion of Hola town, and to compensate for this degazettement through extension of the scheme's northern borders by similar acreage of 2,000 acres. that the proposed degazettement and replacement of the southern eastern segment of the scheme will secure the expansion of Hola Town and Tana River County in general through economic, social, and infrastructural development that is currently hindered by the scheme's current location. Number 6, that the proposal offers the only feasible option in addressing the long-standing challenge and is a win-win arrangement that has been amicably agreed upon by the stakeholders, since the land in the southern part of the scheme is proposed to be replaced by a similar size of land in the northern part of the scheme. Number 7, and that the issues in respect of which this petition is made are not pending before any court of law or other constitutional or legal body. Therefore, your humble petitioners pray that the National Assembly, through the Departmental Committee of Lands, number 1, intervenes to facilitate timely degazettement of 2,000 acres in the southern and eastern parts of Hola irrigation scheme, to facilitate expansion of Hola Town, and to facilitate extension of the scheme's northern borders by similar acreage of 2,000 acres. And number 2, makes any further orders deemed defeat in the circumstances of the petition. And your petitioners will ever pray. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Before I commit it to the committee, are these two members indicative of persons who want to speak to it? Honorable Milemba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. A similar petition was in this House just last week or 2 weeks ago, and I think I spoke on it, and I expressed how I know Hola very well, having traveled in those areas when I'm doing the other things for the teachers, and the suffering of the people courtesy of the fact that the irrigations have taken so much land. But I think last time there was also a connotative relationship with conflict with the wildlife. But Honorable Speaker, what I really wanted to mention was the issue in the first petition, that we did some calculation from the employer's point of view and realized that the young people, when they are asked all those requirements, including this police clearance certificate, it goes to almost 10,000 Kenya shillings. And it is actually hampering, like Honorable Ngeno talked about it very emotionally, the young people to actually apply for jobs.
Okay, I think
thank you.
Don't go too deep into that one. It has already been committed, but you have had your say anyway.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and thank you for this chance.
Okay, Honorable Dr. Makali.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, let me comment on this petition on Hola Town. When the Honorable member started presenting the petition, Honorable Speaker, I was getting a bit worried because he's saying we change irrigation land to land to be where the town can be constructed. And Honorable Speaker, but as he proceeded, I realized that it's a win-win situation because he's saying take 2,000 to accommodate the town and also extend by another 2,000 to the northern part of it, so that at the end of the day, you don't loosen acreage for irrigation. So with those remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support and wish that the committee will be considerate on the matter. Thank you.
So then that is committed to the relevant departmental committee, and I see the chair here. That's the chair Lands. Hope, of course, that they will be able to process it within the time stipulated under our standing orders. So we go to the next order.
Order number 5, papers. Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
Under that particular order, we will start with, actually we have ordinary questions. So we'll start with a member for Kuria East, Honorable Maisori Marwa. Honorable members, even when you have questions, also prepare yourselves to come with your cards, because it becomes very easy for us to Do you have your card?
Not working.
What is the number of your, you have it now?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask the question number 300 of 2021, directed to the Ministry of Sports, Culture and Heritage. Could the Cabinet Secretary state measures put in place to ensure that all indigenous languages spoken by over 79 minority indigenous communities spread over 47 counties in Kenya are protected from extinction? And two, could the Cabinet Secretary also explain the criteria used to determine that only 19 majority community languages in 30 counties would have their local languages preserved from extinctions and taught in schools, leaving out other marginalized indigenous communities whose languages are already at the verge of extinction? And three, does the ministry have any plans to include all indigenous languages spoken in Kenya in the languages used in teaching programs in the national curriculum? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That one will be committed before the Departmental Committee on Sports, Culture and Tourism. Then we go to the member for Awendo, the Honorable Walter Owino.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask question number 312 of 2021, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries. Question number 1, what measures has the government put in place to assist the more than 1.5 million drought-stricken persons who are on the verge of facing starvation in the country? Question number 2, given the massive crop failure being experienced across the country, particularly the maize crop, as a result of rain failure, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the measures in place to ensure the country has adequate food for all going forward? Question number 3, could the Cabinet Secretary provide the long-term strategy for attaining food security in the country, and in particular, the vulnerable persons and areas with adverse and unfavorable weather conditions? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. That one will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock. So we go to the member for Ainapkoi, the Honorable Chepkut. Okay, so we go to the next one, the member for Emuhaya, Honorable Mboko Milemba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to ask question number 318 of 2021 to the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Coordination of National Government. Could the Cabinet Secretary provide the status of investigations into the recent shooting of the following 3 students by police officers: Alfred Ondaba Kutwa of Salwa Primary School, Class 7, Eric Munala Julius, a Form 4 student at St. Peter's Itumbu Secondary School, and Geoffrey Ombwanga, a Class 7 student at Itumbu Primary School, all in the Emuhaya constituency. Number 2, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the steps that the government is taking to deal with the responsible police officers assigned to Luanda Police Station, Luanda Sub-County, who are alleged to have overstepped their mandate by operating outside their administrative jurisdiction, as Emuhaya has got its own commanding police division? And number 3, what measures has the government put in place to compensate the said students for the injuries sustained, to enable them to meet their high costs of hospitalization and resume school? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. That one will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security. Then we go to the member for Changamwe, the Honorable Mwinyi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I arise to ask question 320 of 2021, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Tourism and Wildlife. But before I ask this question, Mr. Speaker, allow me
to express my apprehension regarding this ministry. I've asked a question to this ministry, and this is all over, it's about now 2 months. I've not received any replies. I wonder whether the CS is around in the country, or the ministry is also still functioning, or perhaps we should actually know the fate of this ministry.
First,
I'm
ask
worried.
the question. If you really want to, you see, the Honorable Mwinyi, number one, you need to put your mask properly. Number two is if you have issues with any questions that you've asked, you can raise it in a normal manner. So you know you are able to raise it so that we don't mix up the two.
Thank you,
now,
Mr.
what you are doing is that you are just giving some statement which you cannot be able to pinpoint which particular question has gone unanswered. So I would rather you ask this particular one, and then if you have to raise the other one, raise it specifically, citing the specific question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand guided. But the message, I think, is already across. Mr. Speaker, what is the implementation status of the partnership agreement signed between Messrs. Lafarge, Bamburi Cement Company, and the Kenya Tourist Development Corporation to promote conference tourism at the coast region, whereby the company agreed to, among other things, donate a 10-acre piece of land for the construction of an international conference facility in Bamburi area of Mombasa County? Number two, could the Cabinet Secretary explain why Mombasa County, despite being an international tourist hub, lacks a world-class international conference facility? Number three, could the Cabinet Secretary indicate whether there are plans to ensure that such facility is put up in the county? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. That one will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. Next is the member for Laikipia North, the Honorable Paulata Korere. Did she just leave? Well, let me assume that it was something that she couldn't, hold on to, so let's give her a few more minutes. So we will go to the member for Kadiani, the Honorable Mbui.
Yeah, thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I rise to ask question number 323 of 2021 to the Cabinet Secretary for Labor and Social Protection. First one, Mr. Speaker, could the Cabinet Secretary explain why Nduva Muthengi Nzioka of ID number 1695524, Munyiva Wambua Ndunda of ID number 1605314, Mudhue Mumo of ID number 325228845, and over 200 other beneficiaries of the cash transfer program in Kadiani constituency no longer receive their monthly stipends despite having been successfully recruited into the program and receiving monies for some time? The second one, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the circumstances that led to the removal of these beneficiaries from the system without any formal communication to them? And the third one is, could the Cabinet Secretary undertake to ensure that the said beneficiaries are reinstated into the system, considering that they are all vulnerable and needy, and ensure that they receive their monthly stipends all the way from the time it stopped? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That one will be replied to before the Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. Next is the member for Teso South, the Honorable Geoffrey Omuse.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to ask question number 328 of 2021. Roman 1, could the Cabinet Secretary, the question is directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Education. Could the Cabinet Secretary explain why the ministry suspended the registration of new schools via letter reference dated 15th June 2021, addressed to all regional and county directors of education? Roman 2, could the Cabinet Secretary provide the steps that the ministry is taking to ensure that Machakos Girls Secondary School and the Kodedema Girls Secondary Schools in Teso South constituency, which at the time were at 98% and 60% completion respectively, are registered considering the huge resources already invested towards their construction. The last one, could the Cabinet Secretary give an indication as to when the ministry plans to lift the said suspension? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
This obviously is an extremely serious question, just like the rest of them. But specifically, this one touches directly many members. I see Honorable, what is it, Honorable Ngeno? You know, it's ordinarily not the right procedure for you to raise any issue on this one, but I'm willing to listen to you because I know quite a number of members have had them having an interest in this particular one. Honorable Ngeno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think, like you said, this is a very serious matter, Mr. Speaker, because it touches on the issue that is actually provided for in the Constitution, the right of every citizen to education. Mr. Speaker, you know the reason why we are starting new schools is, number one, because of the introduction of free day secondary education. So that there are so many parents who cannot, Mr. Speaker, afford to send their children to boarding schools and many schools which are very far. Now, these are schools that we are starting closer to the parents, closer to the students. Now, when we are told we cannot register new schools, and yet, Mr. Speaker, there is also, number two, the introduction of 100% transition from primary to secondary. Now, when you want to have 100% transition from primary to secondary, Mr. Speaker, there are no schools. That is why we need to build new schools to allow for that 100% transition. Number three, Mr. Speaker, is the question of new primary schools. You know, even as we speak, Mr. Speaker, the population is rising. It is not decreasing. Our country, people are giving birth. And therefore, the population is rising each and every day. So the reason why we are starting new schools, Mr. Speaker, is to cater for the the increase of population that will need classrooms and many other stuff, Mr. Speaker. So I wish to support the member in that petition that the Ministry of Education should not, in fact, Mr. Speaker, building of classrooms is actually a prerogative of CDF. We are not asking the Ministry of Education to build for us even a single classroom. Employment of teachers is a prerogative of TSC. So why is the ministry so jittery about new schools, yet they are not contributing anything? Mr. Speaker, I support.
Now there is no reason for you to support. You are making your...
I support the petition.
It's not a petition, unfortunately. Yes. It's a question. If it was a petition, it would have been easy. I've just given, you know, an opportunity to members to hear it, because I know they addressed this matter before. Honorable Milemba, not Honorable, there is a point of order by the Honorable Member for Luanda. What is it, Honorable Member for Luanda?
Chair, Speaker, I stand up in support of the question by the member for Teso South. But I take objection to the submission by the Honorable Member for Emurua Dikir that building schools in this country is the prerogative of CDF. Because, Speaker, in this House, we pass the budget. And one of the biggest chunks of budget that we pass in this House goes to education. Actually, the national budget in this country, more than 30% of it goes to the Ministry of Education. And when you consider that CDF is only 2% of the national government's share of the budget, and then you come here and you say that the prerogative of building schools is the business of CDF, I think we are getting it wrong. And I think this thing, Speaker, needs to be clarified. Because I have heard even the Minister of Education himself saying that members of Parliament must build schools. A person no less than the President himself has said that members of Parliament are actually supposed to build schools. When you consider that CDF is 2% of the national budget, divided to 290 constituencies, with many other and the mandate of CDF is defined in the Act. There are so many other things that are supposed to be done. So if you lump this thing and you say that members of parliament are responsible for building these schools in this country, I think we are getting it wrong. But the rest of the point is correct. But having said that, Speaker, having said that...
Actually, what I didn't want you to go there, the Honorable Omulele.
Yes, Speaker.
Because actually on your own you said that the minister himself states that members of parliament should build schools. Now, for the purpose of the relevance to that particular question asked by the member,
yes,
why would they say then, therefore, after asking members to build schools, they are not going to register?
That is where I was coming to. That is where I was coming to speak.
The rubber hits the road.
That is where I was coming to. Honorable Speaker, these members, I know they struggle, and there is no member in this House who wastes even a single shilling that they allocate to improving schools in their constituencies. And when they improve these schools, and they build new infrastructure in these schools, and the same minister comes and says that these schools should not be built. What are we doing in this country? And the same minister, the Speaker, is the one who is saying every day that every child must transit from primary school to secondary school. The meaning of that, Mr. Speaker, my understanding is that for every class 8 that we have sitting for exams, we must have a ready Form 1 class for these kids to transit into. If we do not have an equivalent number of secondary schools ready to receive these children from these primary schools, what are we doing? We must call this minister to order, Speaker. We must call this minister so that he explains to us where he expects the children who are at a Mululu primary school in Luanda constituency to go to secondary school, if those ones at Mumboa primary school are going to Form 1 in Mumboa, transiting all of them to Form 1 there.
Okay.
So these are questions we must ask the minister.
Okay, okay. Just on this one, this is a serious, a very, very serious issue. So, Honorable Komilemba, and I'll give 6 members. Now, and I'm using I'll give 6 members because it is a matter that and I hope, I would not know where the chair, Departmental Committee on Education or the vice chair is, because it would be very important for them to tell us when they can be able to summon them, to ask the minister to be before the committee. Honorable Milemba.
Honorable Speaker, this is a very frustrating issue, and therefore the question asked by the Honorable Member is very, very relevant. There's a problem with the Minister of Education that is trying to relate the number of teachers in schools vis-a-vis the number of schools that should be available. And therefore seems to be moderating that if the teachers who are basically dealt with by Teacher Service Commission are not possibly enough, then we reduce or moderate the number of schools in that order. But, Honorable Speaker, the truth is that majority of the schools are even having teachers employed by BOMs and other private or the parents themselves. And therefore, that relationship should completely be removed from the minister. The minister must go on the ground and realize that with a 100% transition, which he himself was very motive at pushing, many students are now transiting from class 8 to Form 1. And therefore, both the primary schools need to be expanded because it's now free and compulsory education. And the honorable members have built schools. When the COVID struck, the president in his address, together with the minister, said that let the CDF help in improving infrastructure and expanding infrastructure. The so-said infrastructure are the ones that, Honorable Speaker, are not being registered by the Minister of Education. And the honorable members are really suffering because of it. The minister is actually reducing even the number of examination centers amid COVID, meaning that he wants the students to be in the same places, more squeezed than before. The Minister of Education must be called to order. I'm a member of the Education Committee and my chair is not here, but indeed he has to be called to order to understand that with the 100% transition, schools must be registered as they come. And there's no relationship between the availability of Teacher Service Commission teachers and the schools that crop up, because there are over 300,000, Honorable Speaker, trained teachers in the field who can serve. Thank you.
Okay. Now, the Honorable Wangari.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I rise to support the member on this question. Mr. Speaker, the mess that is in the Ministry of Education is crazy. And Mr. Speaker, this issue of registering schools, I don't even know why we are discussing it, because we cannot be giving from one hand and taking from the other. We say we want to transit kids to secondary school, and then we say we cannot register schools. Mr. Speaker, I have a school in Oljorai Secondary. The capacity is 100. The ministry has allocated them 195. What exactly is the ministry doing? Mr. Speaker, this should not even an issue of debate, should not even be an issue of the ministry to decide, because even teachers are given per schools. That's why you're seeing so many teachers are being employed by BOMs in this country, and yet maybe if the schools were spread, they would get allocation from TSC. Mr. Speaker, there is a serious issue in the Ministry of Education, and this also touches in terms of the money and the capitation. The corruption that is going on in that ministry, Mr. Speaker, must be called out. The issue of books. Mr. Speaker, schools are having excess books because we centralized the printing of books in Nairobi and took it from the schools, Mr. Speaker. You get cartons before you even open one. There's another one that have changed the curriculum. Mr. Speaker, when the Committee of Education will be dealing with this issue, let them deal with it very widely and broadly. It's a bigger problem, and it must be called out, Mr. Speaker.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Melly, former chair, Education Committee. And meanwhile, I hope the Honorable Omboko Milemba, because I do not see you are chair or vice.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker,
including what you actually asked yourself, because those are issues that you will need to address with the minister. Yes, Honorable Melly, please.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to speak to this matter. It's a matter of national concern, and I think Honorable Omuse has just brought it. But, Honorable Speaker, I think the ministry is actually sleeping on the job. On several occasions, we have the 100% transition. And members of parliament have moved a step ahead and built schools. Last week, we discussed about congestion in schools. And you know, these are different times, Honorable Speaker. We have issues now in many of schools where students are sleeping in dormitory, in labs. Some of them even are in dining halls. Some even are in tents. Yet, we have built a number of schools to ease congestions in these other areas. Yet, the ministry is refusing to register them. I have a case in my constituency where I have around 3 secondary schools where we built from Form 1 to Form 4. The students now in Form 2. They have not been registered. They have the facilities. We have Cherondo Secondary. We have Kipkure Secondary. All of them, even Kibongwa, they are good. They have students. Yet the ministry is saying there is no need to register them. Honorable Speaker, as my colleagues have just said, look at the national schools. This is a COVID period, and students are very much congested. When they are congested, you'll realize that even diseases will break out. So if the ministry is refusing to register and we have 100% transition, you'll realize that
Honorable members, avoid standing anywhere between the speaker and between the speaker and the member speaking. Now, Honorable Malulu, Njedi, you are actually not even observing social distancing. Actually might even, who are these members? Order members. Order members. Social distance and no standing between a member. By the way, that is in the standing orders. You must have. And you know, Honorable Malulu, you have been here for some time. You must be able to know that. So, Honorable Melly, you can wind down. You've really actually...
Yes, Honorable Speaker, I'm winding up. But I just want to really ask the CS not to actually sabotage his programs in the ministry by trying to stop registration of schools and 100% transition by not registering new schools and allowing expansion of education in this country. Thank you.
Honorable Sossion.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker. I thank Honorable Muse for coming up with these critical
Please, and let's be brief so that I can give actually a few minutes. I see the interest is too much.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, stopping the registration of schools is an informed decision by the Ministry of Education. And Mr. Speaker, looking at the congestion of schools, schools are congested to enroll to as high as 2,000 learners. And Mr. Speaker, it has reached a time we must define what a school is in terms of enrollment. A school with 2,000 learners ceases to be a school. And therefore, over-enrolling schools and refusing or stopping creation of new ones is actually creating a mess. Mr. Speaker, this House must resolve and direct the Ministry of Education to put aside that policy and allow creation of new schools. Honorable Speaker, we must set an upper limit, maybe 500, 700, or 800, so that when we have a school, we have a definition in terms of enrollment, so that we avoid congestion and we ensure that there is delivery of quality services to learners.
Okay. Honorable Komutare Jackson.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Speaker, I think this is a very important question, and it concerns all of us. And I think, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Education is confused. Because if maybe a member constructs a school and he does not even ask them to give anything, they only refuse to give that certificate. And Mr. Speaker, I think the CS does not know even some parts of this country. They should remove that, whatever they have written to stop the registration of schools, because back at our constituency where we represent, there is a lot of problems. There are even no more schools. So I think we need to follow up, and they should withdraw whatever they have written so that they can register schools immediately.
Honorable Waruguru. Then I probably would want to end there and make a decision.
Yes, thank you.
There are quite a number of members who want to speak to this. It is not supposed to be operating this way, but I have used the standing orders here to actually give some leeway to members to speak, because this is a matter that really has to be taken very seriously. Waruguru.
Yes, Speaker, I rise in support of the statement on what the Honorable Chris Omulele have just stated to this House, that the conduct of the Minister of Interior is unbecoming. Not Minister, sorry, Mr. Speaker. The conduct of Minister of Education is unbecoming. The one, Honorable Magoha. I know somebody is just about to ask why I'm obsessed with the Minister of Interior, but he's also another big head, Mr. Speaker. So I owe him no apology. We'll discuss him when his day comes. But truth be told, Mr. Speaker, if the Cabinet Secretary does not prohibit the number of bars which are being operated in our villages, why does he want to stop us from, we women, giving birth and taking our children to school? It doesn't make any sense, and I will continue saying that the only way we are going to liberate this country from the unbecoming conduct of this Cabinet Secretary is reverting to parliamentary system of governance. We need ministers from this House. Today it could be the Honorable Sossion, who is the Minister of Education. You would understand these things better than the current minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I think you are probably not completely prepared. So you woke up with what was in your mind. So, Honorable Ashiali.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Musa, for bringing up this question. Honorable Speaker, for the Cabinet Secretary to stop further registrations of new schools is actually not following what is happening on the ground, because population is not static, Honorable Speaker, and now given preference to interns. Interns must be 35 years.
The relevance there is not very. Let's stick to what the question is. If you have an issue on interns, ask the question.
Okay.
So let's leave it there. Now, honorable members, I'm sure all of you have the same concerns, and I can see it is a very. What we are going to do is this. What we are going to do is, what is a suggestion that you want to have the Honorable Ferdinand, and then I make the ruling on that particular question, separate from the rest.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the chance. I think my suggestion would be, let the minister be called, directed to come here, because whatever he has done everybody is concerned, including me and everybody else. So I want to ask the Speaker to give the Departmental Committee of Education to call the minister before us. Let's have a caucus meeting with him here so I can tell him what is happening. Because he's not, the guy is...
All right, I've heard you, Ferdinand. So now, I want to know from the member of the committee, and that is the Honorable Omboko Milemba. You need to agree on when the minister is coming to your committee in the House here so that we are able to ask the members to be present to prosecute their, because really these are issues, these are COVID times. We cannot be saying that we want students to observe social distance and lumping them in one school by saying that we are not going to register schools. So these are issues that are supposed to arise, and there are quite a number of concerns here which are very valid. 100% transition, also the fact that it is not the TSC which is complaining, it is the ministry. I mean, let's hear, when is it? Because I would think Tuesday, next week, because we are going on recess, would be ideal to ask the minister to appear before the committee, and so that the members would know publicly that on a particular date he will be in the committee and they can be able to prosecute their issues. Yes, Honorable Mboko Milemba, representing the committee.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Given the weight of these issues, and given the fact that the chair is not here and I'll have to consult the chair, I only want you to give us 7 days. And if Tuesday will fit in the 7 days notice, because I know if we give him a notice that is too shorter than 7 days, he'll have a chance to actually wringle out. So if you can, 7 days from now, Honorable Speaker, I'll tell the chair to call the minister.
So then we fix it for Wednesday next week?
Very well.
Wednesday next week, the CS should appear before the committee, and the members who have issues, you be ready to come and prosecute the specific issues, together with what, of course, the Honorable Muse will. So we will have it as a session for answering the question, and we give an opportunity, and I think the minister should come for that one alone. Even if he has any other question before the committee, on that particular day, he will be coming to respond to the issue of failure to register, or actually the order not to register new schools, on Wednesday next week. Wednesday next week.
Well guided, thank you.
Let's proceed to the next one, which is by the member for Mogotio. The Honorable Tuitai.
Thank you, Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Even before I ask my question, I'd like to note that the CS Education, we were with him yesterday, and the way he was responding to the questions of the members was not very good. And I hope next Tuesday or next Wednesday. Okay, my question, Mr. Speaker, is as follows, which is to the Cabinet Secretary for Education. I'm asking question number 330 of 2021. Could Roman 1, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the policy regarding the use of school buses by communities around educational institutions, development funds? 2, could the Cabinet Secretary also explain the reasons for the recent ban on the use of school buses by communities living near learning institutions? Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Speaker.
Very well. That one will be replied to before the departmental Committee on Education and Research. But just to tell you, the Honorable Member, it will not be part of the matters to be answered on Wednesday. They will get another day for you, because on Tuesday, unless otherwise, will be reserved for the matter on registration. But if there will be an opportunity, you can still have it on the same day anyway. So the member for Sigawe Toin, ask your question. Honorable members, you should be coming with your cards.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. I rise to ask question 331 of 2021, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Labor and Social Protection. Question 1. Could the Cabinet Secretary provide the status of the recent bilateral agreement regarding health workforce collaboration signed between the Republic of Kenya and the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland, which was signed during the latest official visit by His Excellency the President to the United Kingdom? Roman 2, could the Cabinet Secretary also provide details of the exchange program between the two countries as per the signed agreement, highlighting the specific cadres of Kenyan healthcare workers to be involved in the exchange program, the selection criteria to be applied, the ministry or agency to be responsible for the recruitment, and
one will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. Next is the member for Sigor. Honorable member for Sigor, Honorable Lochakapong, sorry.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to ask question 337 of 2021, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for East African Community and Regional Development. 1. Could the Cabinet Secretary provide the implementation status?
Order, Honorable Kositai. Social distance. Order. Proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Question 1, could the Cabinet Secretary provide the implementation status of Sigor Weiwei Integrated Development, which was officially launched by the President on 2nd November 2016? 2, could the Cabinet Secretary explain why the said project has stalled despite assurance by the President that the project would be completed within a year? 3, could the Cabinet Secretary give the time frame within which this project is expected to be completed? And finally, 4, could the Cabinet Secretary further explain how funds meant for conservation of Correlach area in Sigor constituency, a catchment area for the Sigor Weiwei Integrated Development Irrigation Project, were utilized, including the allocations made and payments made so far? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well, that will be replied to before the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. Then next is the member for Saboti. Honorable Amisi. You see, if members came with their cards, it would make it very easy for them to be located. But if you have a question and you don't have your card, it becomes a big issue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think my card is working, unless the problem is on your side. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to ask question number 348 of 2021 to the Cabinet Secretary for ICT, Innovation, and Youth Affairs. Number 1, could the Cabinet Secretary provide a list of all youth empowerment centers that have been constructed across the country in the past 4 years, indicating their locations and their completion status? Number 2, could the Cabinet Secretary indicate the number of centers projected for construction in the current financial year and specify constituencies where they will be located? Number 3, could the Cabinet Secretary outline the measures that the Ministry has put in place to ensure that the said centers are constructed to the required standards, well equipped and operationalized in all the 290 constituencies? Thank you.
Very well. That one will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Information, Communication, Information and Innovation. Next and lastly is the member for Laikipia North.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I rise to ask question number 321 of 2021 directed to the Teacher Service Commission. Could the chairperson provide the status of teachers' recruitment in marginalized areas across the country? Secondly, Mr. Speaker, could the Commission provide the number and details of teachers who are recruited in the just concluded recruitment exercise from Laikipia North constituency? Thank you, Speaker.
Very well. That is a question for written reply by the Teacher Service Commission. Now we end that particular order, so we go to the next one.
Order number 8, they are here. Speaker, I believe that the Honorable Shabir had already spoken to this particular business.
Can I check the records?
Please do.
Because if that is the case, Honorable Shabir, and you know you are a seasoned legislator, you will be in a lot of trouble. So let me see, let me have the list of members who have spoken to confirm. But you see, Honorable Shabir, you can easily, clearly tell us whether you had actually spoken or not. Because if you actually didn't speak, you know it. I'm sure you know about the bill. This is the Honorable Florence Mutua's bill.
Sorry, Honorable Mutua's bill, yes, I did speak. Sorry.
Now, Honorable members, sometimes, I am actually going to call the mover to respond, this particular one, because really, I mean, we cannot flog a horse that is. So, Honorable members, I am aware that the Honorable Florence Mutua is not in and has made a request that is either Honorable Chris Wamalwa or Honorable Zuleika can reply. The two members, I would have thought that when you are absent, you specifically pinpoint a member you want to have reply so that we don't have any confusion. Honorable Zuleika, are you able to reply on her behalf? Proceed.
Yes, Speaker. Thank you, the County MP of Busia County. Honorable Speaker, I would like to thank members for their invaluable contributions and suggestions towards the improvement of the bill. I undertake to input the proposed suggestions during the committee of the whole House stage so as to enrich the bill. Honorable Speaker, it is, however, unfortunate that some of the remarks made by some members bordered on politics. Yes, this is not a party-sponsored bill, yet some nominations. Some members alluded tried to misinform the House and misdirect them and tell them that this bill has been made for some party leader.
When the matter is not governed by any other bit of the standing orders. But now this one is
Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 20 of 2019, second reading.
Seeing that there are two members who had spoken, that is Honorable Elisha.
Bill number 43 of 2020. Mr. Speaker, this bill has taken me 3 years because I had brought it to Parliament in 2018 and it has gone to finance, it has gone to budget, it went to finance and it got lost along the way. Mr. Speaker, this bill is for the people in the sense that we are trying to change what is given to depositors who have deposited money in banks which fail. Mr. Speaker, this bill is from more than 20 years back, and the one we want to change, because it says that if a bank falls, you are only given up to 100,000 shillings if a bank fails. And then, if you've got 2 or 3 accounts, they are all consolidated so that when you are given the money, it is delayed in the sense that you will only get 100,000 whether you had 50, 50, 50 or more. Mr. Speaker, when I first suggested this bill in 2018, apparently in 2020, the Deposit Protection Fund, KDIC, changed the regulations. They brought the regulations, they put it up to 500,000. But Mr. Speaker, the law has never been changed. The law has always remained the way it is, that the bill suggests that it is only 100,000 shillings. And Mr. Speaker, that is the reason I have brought this amendment, that it is in statute, in the law itself, as an act of parliament. Mr. Speaker, the reason for bringing this amendment is very, very simple. Over these many years, Mr. Speaker, we've had more than 20 institutions which have failed. Mr. Speaker, and some go all the way back to 1993, and I would want to read them. Like Postbank Credit, it was gone into liquidation on 20th of May, 1993. You go to Trade Bank, 18 August 1993. Middle Africa, 20th August 1993. And I go all the way up to when our majority leader was the Minister for Finance. Even during his time, there were some banks which failed. Mr. Speaker, there was the Dubai Bank prior to his coming in, Daima Bank. Not that the majority leader was in charge of those banks. It is, Mr. Speaker, there was the Trust Bank in 2001, there was the Euro Bank in 2003, Prudential Building Society in 2005, and Daima Bank in 2005. Mr. Speaker, the issue here we are talking about is trying to raise the amount which a person who is a depositor in a bank. Mr. Speaker, and when we did this, when I presented it to the Finance Committee and our Parliamentary Budget Committee, Parliament Budget Office, they made a proposal and they looked at the pros and cons of this bill. Mr. Speaker, there are so many people out there, because the cost of money now, I mean, the value of money has really declined, that any other person will have not less than 500,000 in their accounts. And Mr. Speaker, what happens is, if somebody has put some money in the bank, which is 600,000, and if a bank falls, that money will never be refunded, because he will only get 500,000 at the current rates because of the regulations. But what if the regulations are changed by the CEO who comes in, or by maybe central bank or anybody else? Because that is not a confirmation that sorry, that is not a confirmation that you will be given those kind of money. So, Mr. Speaker, let's say today, because all the presidential candidates who are all speaking about economy, about the small person, be it the Deputy President, be it the Right Honorable Prime Minister, be it Musalia Mudavadi, be it Kalonzo Musyoka, all are talking about the common person and the economy. But, Mr. Speaker, once we do not have the structure where people can get, the depositors can get drawback, and I believe that will not work. Mr. Speaker, the other issue, when the Parliamentary Budget Office did analysis of this bill, they even came up with very, very good suggestions that this bill, once it's enacted, people will have confidence in putting their money in the bank, because at the moment, people who want to deposit money will only deposit up to 500,000. The rest, they would either put it in their house or put it somewhere else. Came up with a chart where they said, if this law is enacted, the deposits in the accounts will be, in the first year, we will get an extra 20% as savings in the banks. And every subsequent year, we will have an extra 10%, people depositing more money in the bank, because they are sure if a bank falls today, they will definitely get their 1 million shillings. Mr. Speaker, I have even proposed in this amendment that we have, if somebody has got some money in the account and he has got 2 or 3 accounts in the bank, that they should all be, they should not be consolidated, but each and every account should stand on its own. Mr. Speaker, that is the case which happens in the trust accounts, which KDIC gives money to individual accounts and not consolidated. So, Mr. Speaker, when this law, if it will be passed, and I am requesting my fellow colleagues that we should pass this law, because today if you were to ask any person on the street, any small trader, be it Gikomba, be it Meru in Gakoromone, or be it the small people, the SMEs, not any person will not have less than 500,000 in an account, because probably or they have sold something and they've got the money in the account waiting to invest. And in case a bank falls, that means all that money will go and they will just be given 500,000. So that is why, Mr. Speaker, with the South Africa, where we have the same.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to second this very important bill. Honorable Speaker, I will not be able to stand for long because today my calipers are broken, so I'm standing. So, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Dawood Rahim, I've come up with a very progressive bill, Honorable Speaker, and I beg to second this bill. Honorable Speaker, it is very important because Honorable Dawood, have done is scientific analysis by raising the deposit guarantee from 101 million. Honorable Speaker, and if you see from the face of it, even from the layman angle, Honorable Speaker, if today you use 100,000, you can only be able to buy 2 cows of 50,000 each. Yet when this act came to place, 100,000 was able to buy 20 cows. Raising it to 1 million translate to the ability to buy 20 cows of 50,000 each. So it is scientifically analyzed that we should raise this deposit insurance guarantee fund from 100 to 1 million. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Dawood had said that we need to encourage the culture of it. Honorable Speaker, we are
capital, the cost of capital. Because if the banks, instead of putting a certain percentage to cover 500,000 as an insurance scheme, have to increase that, the premiums increase. As the premiums increase, the rate that the banks will charge to the public increases. And hence, there's a financial constraint to the wananchi, not to the bigger boys. The wananchi are looking for smaller loans. Now, we also, mask that's getting me. So Honorable Chair, we have either you over-insure and the central bank's team has in mind to save the small depositor.
Under receivership, because the law then provided for a maximum refund of 100,000 shillings. I want to imagine of a scenario, and as a banker, Honorable Speaker, I'll tell you from experience that there are people who deposit quite a lot of money in the bank. People put in lots and lots of their savings, knowing that the bank is the safest place to live in or to deposit or to keep their investment. Some of them have kept the money which is meant for medicine, meant for treatment. Some have kept it as a retirement benefit, Honorable Speaker. Some people put the money in their account as an insurance scheme for their children who are going to school. And they all have different reasons for putting money in their account, Honorable Speaker. So in the event that the bank where they have trusted the money in the name of deposit goes under, Honorable Speaker, the beneficiary or the customer suffers immensely. Some of the customers have died out of the shock because they cannot bear the loss and the idea that they are not going to get their money, which they have worked so hard. Probably it was their pension money which they have put in the bank, Honorable Speaker. The other keyword that I see coming from this amendment, Honorable Speaker, is that we are going to encourage people now from, instead of keeping money in their houses, they will be able to deposit this money in their account. They will be able to trust the banks to keep the money so that they are secure and the money is safe. Honorable Speaker, from experience, I know of so many Kenyans who have, out of fear, have decided to convert their houses. You cannot use it to secure yourself to get a loan in the event that you have an emergency which requires some money urgently, maybe much more than you are able to raise in the name of deposit, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I see this amendment also helping the small banks, because the small banks have suffered a lot because the customers, most serious customers, fear putting their money there, Honorable Speaker. Remember, even institutions like such as CDF, a lot of money that we lost as a country. And I'm sure they are putting systems in place to ensure that we cover breathing in the hospital is worse than struggling here. I respect your guidance, Honorable Speaker, and my friend. So, Honorable Speaker, as I was saying, there are people who have lost money and they have lost confidence with the small banks. And as a country, Honorable Speaker, we are emerging. We are a small country emerging now, and we need to assure people who have the capital that they can start a small microfinance institutions, or they can start a bank and they'll be able to attract their customers. Because if we don't do that, Honorable Speaker, then we are going to rely on the multinational banks, which have already established themselves. Banks coming up, if possible, every county coming up with their own bank. Whenever they have a big transaction, they can merge. It's allowed in the banking industry, Honorable Speaker, that the banks can team up and they serve a big customer who would probably need much more money than they can raise as an individual bank. But if we can encourage, by way of this act, banks to come up in every part of Kenya, which eventually will grow up to be the equities of the days to come, Honorable Speaker, that would be a good thing to do. Two things will happen, Honorable Speaker. We'll be able to create employment by way of having those institutions because we have the customers. Number two, we'll also spread the financial literacy to our people, and also accessibility and understand you, or who understand your language, would also enhance the confidence that Kenyans would need to trust the banks and their money. Because that way, we would then be able to measure the capacity of the country and know for sure.
So that if you are having a headache, you don't want to overdose of medication that don't have the full information in terms of analyzing where they are putting their money. And hence, end up like just being wooed in terms of there's a new bank, friends, let's go there, the bank fails. And to history, deposit insurance was started in the United States way back in 1934. And this was as a result of so many failures following the 1930s, that is a Great Depression. Because that depression created failures in banks, nothing to do with the behavior of the banks themselves. And people ended up losing their money, like happened in 2018, in 2008, and several other situations. If you now look at our situation in the 80s, our banks mainly collapsed because of political machinations. And also because they were used as conduits, some of them were used as conduits, to move money from NSSF, NHIF, for political reasons. The money had moved from the public coffers through the bank to finance, for example, some fake properties and titles in Karura Forest. Then the bank was, the owners of the bank mysteriously disappeared. Or seen circumstances that could create a loss. And you also look at, in those people, you are the small savers, not the big saver. Because the big saver could also be part of that collision. And I think the other thing is that whole point of are we creating some beneficiaries from this situation? Behavior, and I think I've covered that point. But the more fundamental thing, and I raised it earlier, and Honorable Shakil raised it because I think he's a member of the committee. Why do we want to expose ourselves by losing the 130 billion we already have, increasing the risk to around 950, just because people have been lured by banks to go and put their money into those banks, and the money disappears with the owners of banks. Remember, here we are not talking about recovering that money from the owners. Huh? There's a risk that the money could just disappear, and we've seen it. But in those cases, why should the public, through KDIC, then be made to pay for rogue bankers who open up these banks, not necessarily to create banks to offer intermediation services, but with the intention of defrauding that money? We must reduce that risk. And this whole concept of having smaller amounts, if you look at the Nigerian currency, the Nigerian naira, yeah, the biggest note, I think it's 50 naira. It means very little. Yeah? Naira is in Nigeria. Ghana use cedi. Even Nigeria, the reason it's so small, it's kept so small, is that the cost of forging becomes more expensive, yeah, than the money itself. When you have bigger notes, you're encouraging people even to forge those notes, because the cost of manufacturing a fake note is less than the value you get. So, going by the same basis, you want to, the benefits, if they are so huge, they encourage people to manipulate. If you keep the benefits so low, you discourage people from that moral hazard situation. And I think this is exactly what the rationale we need to start getting through. And I'm trying to make this issue, it's complex, to try to, so I can persuade members to see the thinking of the committee. And much as I really appreciate the work put, I would urge, there's really no point in proceeding. Then we have a deletion on all the clauses to bring it back to zero. Let us reconsider it, and I will be looking, is there a way we can salvage this situation? But certainly,
Honorable Leader, you'll have an extra minute.
If we can get any, first of all, the 500,000 has already been updated, so we don't need to update so far. And then the second issue of payment within 6 months, I simply can't see the logic. The current law says the payment should be done within 30 days. I can't see the logic why we would then be saying, don't pay in 30 days, pay in 6 months. So this is, again, it's an automatic deletion. And obviously, the fine does not arise, because already we have provided for 30 days. So the only thing that is convincing is whether we should be paying 100,000, no, 500,000 or $1 million. And I cannot see any case that has been brought as to move into that direction without encouraging the risky behavior. So I would urge the House that we make that decision at the appropriate time, and because now the bill is with us, it's no longer with the mover. We would have asked him to withdraw it, but the House will have to agree with the committee that we reject this bill in its entirety. However, I thank the member for the efforts, although the effort might end up with more risk to the Kenyan people, who, as a House, we need to protect.
Honorable Leader, you
have money available to prevent the collapse of banks. I mean, I was saving with Chase Bank, which is now SBM Bank. After all the restructuring and all the boardroom discussions that they had, where everybody obviously had something to make, we were told we had no choice. Whatever the deposits we had to agree to be paid that money over a period of time. That was better than losing it all as the Imperial Bank depositors did. So, Mr. Speaker, I honestly commend my brother for his efforts, and I encourage him not to give up, because at the end of the day, we are here to represent the people, and the people should not lose money when they save in any country, in any bank in this, or any financial institution in this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
The Honorable Oyula Maero, member for Butola.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also contribute to this very important bill. The amendment to this deposit bill is very important to the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, a depositor takes his money to the bank for safe custody and for future. A depositor expects that any time he goes back to the bank to look for his money, it should be available and not lost up, and hence he loses his deposit. So it is the responsibility of the bank, the management of the bank, to ensure that the deposits are well taken care of. Central Bank is there to supervise the banks and make sure that the depositors' monies are safe. So whatever happens, the responsibility lies with the with the central bank and the bank and the banks. So the deposit protection should actually come in case the banks are completely unable. And therefore, they should be able to compensate the depositor to the maximum level, not 100,000, Mr. Speaker. So we should not look at the depositors as small depositors or big depositors. To earn this money takes time, so it must be protected. So if the small depositor who was expected is told that the money is lost, I think we are like telling the depositor that you would as well go to hell. So, Mr. Speaker, my position is to support this bill so that the depositor is properly compensated in case the banks fail. It should be the responsibility of the central bank to make sure that the banks do not fail. So even the 1 million shillings we are talking about, Mr.
Has to contribute to it. It's a very important bill that we've waited for a long time. Honorable Speaker, on the Kenya Deposit Insurance Amendment Bill, a maximum of around 500,000. And what Honorable Daud is proposing is to 1 million. I think this is and through an act. What has been done through a regulation and what has been done through an act, the act is more stronger. It is safe in this bank. And it will also make it accessible for many Kenyans, because many Kenyans have now resorted to even going into money transfers through Safaricom and projects instead of going to the M-Copper, to Lisa, or they call it what? Fulisa and these other things, which are very expensive. And the interest rate is almost 300 to almost engage yourself in business. And this will grow the business in our country. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support.
The Honorable Murugara Gitonga, member for Taraka.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I have labored to listen to the leader of majority, trying in mysterious ways to pour some cold water on this bill, when actually it is a very well-intentioned bill. And that if what he's saying is true, or funds the increment. Whoever funds that increment can also fund the increment being proposed by Honorable Dawood. Most importantly, the
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me from the onset say that I actually support this amendment deposit 1 million, will actually cover most of the small depositors. Because if you look at the way the Kenyans deposit in the banks, they actually deposit very small amounts. So maybe if they can be able to recover 1 million of their deposits, then this will cover most of the Kenyans who have deposited with these banks. And that means maybe even more than 80% of the depositors. These people will not lose their investment. They will not lose their business. And by doing so, then they are actually contributing to our economy. Our economy will be affected because we will not be able to pay their taxes. So I actually support that the amount is raised from 100,000 to 1 million so that most of the depositors, that is the conclusion of the liquidation. And this one will actually cover most of the depositors and ensure that their businesses continue and their source of income also continue so that they can continue with their business. Because most of the times you see, like with some of those banks which were liquidated, it took so long for people to be given even that 100,000. It took years. But if the period is reduced to less than 6 months or 6 months and below, then people can now continue with their businesses and Kenya can continue even getting our revenue and not affect our economy and the businesses of these people. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill. Thank you.
The Honorable Mutunga Kanyuithia, member for Tigania West.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to add my voice to my colleagues who have spoken to and against this bill. Honorable Speaker, we all are aware of what has happened in Kenya over time. Banks have collapsed, people have lost their livelihood, people have lost their savings. And any effort to ensure or to assure people of their livelihood, of their savings, is welcome. That is why I support this bill, and I support the effort to increase the amount of money that one would recover in the event that there is a collapse of a bank. Honorable Speaker, we all are also aware of what happened in the past. It is important for us to encourage Kenyans to open up banks. If Kenyans do not have confidence in banks like Equity, banks like Commercial Bank, we will not have them now as international banks. Equity was a building society. It has now grown into an international bank because of the support it has gotten from the Kenyans. And that support is derived from the confidence that Kenyans have in this particular bank, and many other banks, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, most of the small people in terms of income are savers. Most of the banks are sustained by small savings. And when a bank collapses, the greater majority of the people who suffer are small savers. Honorable Speaker, what happens in these banks, if you look at the statistics, most of the big people, or those who have a lot of money, borrow money from the small people. In other words, the small support the big. Therefore, opening up the bracket increases the number of people who will be now saving in our banks, and that gives them confidence that they will not lose their livelihood, they will not lose their savings, and therefore they can save more. That is why I support this particular bill. This particular bill creates an opportunity for investment in the banking industry. Many banks will survive, small banks will come up. They will get customers because people know that their money is protected. Honorable Speaker, opening up brackets will basically enhance that particular confidence in saving. We are talking about the maximum paid to a depositor, increasing from the legislated 100,000 currently to around 1 million shillings. When I was speaking, even if it was slightly more, I think it would create more confidence and open up brackets for slightly bigger savers to also be confident that they may keep their money in terms of cash in the bank instead of keeping their money in terms of where. So that's why I support the fact that we increase the amount recoverable from a collapsed bank system, as one of our speaker. It will enable many of the Kenyans to participate in.
I think it's wrong.
The Honorable Member from Diwa, resume your seat. The Honorable Tonui, proceed.
Thank you. You know, the Honorable Member comes from around Kisumu area, and they have a joint in the area which is called bottoms up. What we are talking about is bottom up, not that one of Kisumu joint. Differentiate between the two. So here we are trying to take care of the hustlers, those people who are struggling to make their ends meet. And if they deposit any amount in the bank, that amount should be well taken care of. And I want to commend the current governor of the CPK. I believe he has been supervising the banks quite well. None has collapsed of late since the days of Chase Bank. And there was another one. I believe what he's doing is very good. He should continue with the same. The law only protects a deposit of 100,000, which we want to adjust to 1 million shillings. I think that is good if we upgrade it from the level of regulations to an act of parliament. That will be stronger, because those people who are making regulations are appointees and political appointees who can easily be manipulated, and there are so many interests. In fact, I wonder, I hope this one will go through, because I know there are many political interests and such in this sector, and it may influence the decision, the direction where this bill will go through. I also wish that we could take care of these small borrowers, especially those which have been prevented by the banks from getting the loans directly, but being allowed to get the same loans from the same bank indirectly through M-Swari. There was one time when we had this limit on interest rates, and the banks opened this thing called M-Swari to go through the back door and loan their money through M-Pesa and such. I believe that was illegal, and I hope a person like Omutata will borrow from this idea and take it and follow them up on the monies which they overcharge Kenyan, when we had a law ensuring that the only interest could be an upward of 4% above the treasury bonds. That was what was required, but since that was not having a legal framework, the members of the public were exploited. There are also many hustlers, like, so even teachers are hustlers, and they have joined circles, and some established bank owners did also mislead the teachers to even buy to collapsing banks and losing also their deposits. These small people need to be protected by the government, so that those who are in charge of these circles cannot be manipulated by the bank owners and sell to them empty shells and ending up losing their small savings. These struggling hustlers needs to be taken care of at any given opportunity. So this adjustment from 100,000 amount covered under this insurance to 1 million, I believe that refund is going to be good. It can give somebody a startup capital when they want to restart something, especially the hustlers. The hustlers live hand to mouth, so they could be depositing something in the bank so that Dawood is worried when we talk of hustlers, this bill will not be ascended. Dawood, it will be ascended. Don't worry. So thank you for the opportunity to comment on this.
The Honorable Nyikal, what is out of order?
Chair, I stand on order number 95. I've listened carefully. All the people who have participated are actually supporting this bill. is important. So I would call upon the mover to reply.
Honorable members, the Honorable Nyikal has stood in his place and proposed that the mover be called to reply. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? Nay. The nays have it.
Yes, that's okay.
The Honorable Owundo Ojiambo.
Call after this. Yes. Honorable Speaker, thank you for this opportunity to contribute to this bill. Honorable Speaker, I stand here with a bit of reservations in respect of this bill, and I do so in respect of the section that is supposed to be amended. That's section 28, that makes provisions for a minimum, but also makes provision for the corporation may from time to time determine any other amount to be an amount to be the limit or the minimum or the maximum, which they have done so through regulation. Honorable Speaker, the bill intends to amend the Kenya Deposit Insurance Act, specifically the issue of the insurance corporation, deposit insurance fund, how much it can pay. Honorable Speaker, there's some fundamentals that we need to put in place at the onset for us to understand the genesis of this matter. First of all, Honorable Speaker, it is expected that people in any given jurisdiction will save. It's those savings that are lent to investors, and it's those investors who invest, create jobs, create supplies, and create and enable a running economy. So therefore, Honorable Speaker, the importance of deposits in any economy cannot be gainsaid, cannot be overemphasized. It's extremely important. Honorable Speaker, secondly, it also presupposes at one time or another, a deposit-taking institution will have challenges, will collapse due to external and external factors, due to extraneous and local factors. Honorable Speaker, it's on this instance, therefore, that in the event the deposit-taking institution has challenges meeting their obligations, what happens? It is possible this is an inherent risk in the banking industry or financial institution. So therefore, there are other mechanisms. The first mechanism is the deposit-taking institutions manages the risks on their own. Secondly, they transfer the risk. And I think so with this wisdom that the Deposit Insurance Fund and the Deposit Insurance Corporation was created under the Kenya Deposit Insurance Act. Honorable Speaker, then there are three now. The issue here is, who is a depositor? Who stands to lose most? Who is a depositor? Who stands to lose? Who is a depositor who can manage the loss of his deposits? It's probably on this basis that the Principal Act set 100,000 and the regulations attendant to it set 500,000 as the amount to be compensated in the event of a financial institution collapsing. Honorable Speaker, why do financial institutions collapse? That's the question. Should they actually collapse in the first instance? Honorable Speaker, there are provisions in the Banking Act, there are provisions in this Subject Act that gives the Central Bank of Kenya, gives the corporation itself, gives other government agencies the authority and the power to supervise banks to an extent that banks do not collapse. With hindsight, Honorable Speaker, even from the very first instance, if you are making a decision to deposit your money, you are making a decision to invest, there is an expectation that any depositor will take a bit of due diligence to assess and test whether the financial institution has got capacity to manage their deposits. There's a shared risk. Not fall prey to sweet-talking salespeople to invest or deposit in shell companies. Many occasions, Honorable Speaker, Many of the institutions that have collapsed by design. It's not by default. There was already an intention from the word go to defraud specifically the big depositors, who are generally government institutions and government entities and other related entities. Honorable Speaker, to imagine that an institution will fail in this modern era with a strong CBK is therefore to cast doubt into the ability of the central bank and other institutions not to have seen the telltale signs in advance. Honorable Speaker, Section 38 of the Principal Act clearly mandates the corporation, together with the CBK, to continuously carry out inspection to ensure there are no risks at all. Honorable Speaker, the same Act under Section 2 creates a definition called problem institutions, which means any institution that places the interests of its depositors of the banking sector at risk. So essentially, Honorable Speaker, the amendment in this Act, however well-intentioned they are trying to address the wrong problem. They're not trying to address the root cause of any collapse. Honorable Speaker, today 100,000 might not mean much. Neither will 1 million mean much. In the next few years, we might even move this amendment or these limits to even 1 billion. We will never be able to satisfy all the depositors. My Honorable Speaker, the focus should not actually be the minimum. The focus should not be any monetary amount. The focus should be how do we insulate the banking sector from collapse that are very well designed. Honorable Speaker, this country has got a tendency of being carried away by euphoria, by sloganeering, by very sweet marketing tools or marketing slogans or marketing pitch that sways Kenyans to deposit or engage in some risk investment. How do you explain pyramid schemes? How do you explain phony cooperatives or circles that swindle people's money? Yet they know very well they are being swindled. Such restrictive measures and address the root cause, address issues. How do you determine a bank? Honorable Speaker, banks create facilities. Banks create deposits. Banks create assets that can insulate them from collapse. If a small bank comes and tells you they'll pay you 15% on your deposit, any sane person should ask him or herself, is this real or is a mere stories? The problem in Kenya, with Kenyans, they believe in get-rich-quick mentality that are being sold by some politicians around in the names of bottoms-up, Honorable Speaker. Manna doesn't no longer drops from heaven. There's no other way other than working. This story of get quick rich, you go and deposit and make money, will not happen. So, Honorable Speaker, the focus, I totally accept, empathize with my colleague for having gone out of the way, but honestly speaking, this is another legislation that has got no value. Honorable Speaker, basic statistics indicate 90% of the deposits in many institutions, especially under individual deposits, are less than 200, less than 100. It's an average of about 150,000. Moving the deposit to $1 million without looking at the amount of fund, the amount of levy that the banking institutions or financial institutions are contributing to the deposit protection and insurance protection fund is essential, Honorable Speaker, to collapse the fund. It will never manage to pay because the principle of insurance, there must be enough premiums, less claims for it to be suitable. Honorable Speaker, I'm inclined to agree with the committee that this amendment might not be the right solution to the underlying problem in the banking sector and the stories going around. Honorable Speaker, a hustler, somebody with 1 million in the bank, cannot really be called a hustler, unless that's another swindler that we have been told to know to be. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Ngugi Ndwati, member for Gatanga.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for also giving me an opportunity to make my contribution towards the bill. And from the onset, Honorable Speaker, I want to say that I also support the bill. It will go a long way in protecting the small depositors. Honorable Speaker, a majority of Kenyans do not hold a lot of money in our banks. In fact, if I'm not wrong, over 80% of the depositors in our local banks hold less than 100,000. And it's important that we protect them. Honorable Speaker, I've heard Honorable Oundo saying that 100,000 is nothing. 100,000, Honorable Oundo, is a lot of money. And there's not many Kenyans who have that kind of money. So maybe when you get an opportunity, you'll need to retract that so that you are not bashed by the people of Funyula. Honorable Speaker, I come from Murang'a County. And Murang'a County, we are not
The Honorable Ngugi, just hold on. The Honorable Oundo, what is out of order?
Honorable Speaker, and I think if Hansard will bear me witness, I said 90% of Kenyan deposits is on average of about 150, between 100 to 200. And I clearly said probably today, 100,000 might not look much. And we might again move that threshold to even $1 billion, which is not possible under the current regime. So I say in most of the depositors, it's an average of about 150,000.
The Honorable Oundo, you're absolutely right. I do not think that he besmirched those who have 100,000 or less. He said that in a comparative way. Proceed, the Honorable Oundo.
Oh, thank you. Honorable Speaker, I was saying, I come from Murang'a County, where most of the local banks began from. And those banks have been built by the ordinary Kenyans. The ordinary tea grower, the ordinary coffee farmer, the ordinary avocado grower, the milk farmer, the banana farmers, and they are the ones who have really supported these banks. And Honorable Speaker, from those banks have emerged one of the biggest banks in this country called Equity Bank. And it's only not Equity Bank. There are other smaller banks which are coming up. Amica Sacco, Murata Sacco, and many other banks, Honorable Speaker, who will not be able to mention here. So it is important that, Honorable Speaker, we protect our people. And again, Honorable Speaker, I've heard many people here calling some of us hustlers. And I want to dispute that. Honorable Speaker, my mother used to sell vegetables. I'm a son of a mama mboga. And I want to say that my mother was not poor. So when I hear people despising my mother, Honorable Speaker, I'm normally very bitter. Because those small businesses who have built this country, and they are not gangsters or fraudsters. These are people who work very hard. Honorable Speaker, I grew up in a family of 9. And my mother, who used to sell vegetables, good schools, all of us have gone to school. So I would advise leaders, let's not despise our people. Let's not show them that they are nothing. It is from that small business, and we have seen it, demonstrated by people from Kangema and Madhya. People who came here as shoe shiners. From that shoe shining business, you would start selling newspapers. From selling newspapers, he would start a small kiosk. From that small kiosk, he would start a timber selling business. And this one, Honorable Speaker, if you go to Machakos bus stop, those big businesses you see there, when those businesses started growing up, Honorable Speaker was around. And those people started very small. And nowadays, they are big people. Honorable Speaker, even a majority of us here, even having gone through university, we also started small. Honorable Speaker, we used to walk to work. We used to share houses. We used to share food. And this is something which we need to encourage, Honorable Speaker. We need to encourage our youth and to tell them there's no free money. That opportunity will never be there. It will never be there. You have to start small, you grow. Whether you are educated, whether you are not educated, you must learn to do something. And Honorable Speaker, I really want to encourage our youth. Not all of us can go to university. This government has done a lot. We have built the technical colleges, our TVETs, we have youth polytechnics. I want to encourage our youth. Join that polytechnic in your local area. Become that carpenter who we are lacking in this nation. Become that plumber we are lacking in this nation. Become that electrician who we are lacking in this nation. And I can assure you, even with that training, just the local training, Honorable Speaker, you can grow up to be a big person. Honorable Speaker, I used to be a consultant before I transformed myself to be a contractor. And Honorable Speaker, what motivated me? As a young consultant, I would see young people, people who have left our local polytechnics, they come, somebody with just a basic skill, a certificate course. He would come, you start him with a job of 100,000. Tomorrow he would grow to 1 million. The other day he's doing work worth 50 million. The other time you would give him work worth 100 million. And Honorable Speaker, with the little money I was getting as a consultant, I decided to transform myself from being a consultant to a contractor. And those opportunities are there. And Honorable Speaker, I want to say, from the little opportunities which are provided by the government, I grew up to be a big contractor. In 2007, Honorable Speaker, from my humble beginnings, I was given an award as the third best performing contractor, African contractor, not African, third best performing contractor in Kenya. And that is what I want to encourage our people. Those opportunities are there. You don't have to bribe anybody. Those jobs are available by the government. And Honorable Speaker, they advertise. You don't need anyone to support you. Our young people must be encouraged. And that idea of calling our people hustlers should end, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the only thing which I'm disagreeing with the bill is this idea of paying people 6 months after liquidation. That one, maybe we need to amend a bit, Honorable Speaker, because liquidation in this country has taken very long. Sometimes even 10 years. If we'll have to wait for 10 years, Honorable Speaker, to pay our people, that is quite long. Our way should be found out, Honorable Daud, so that our people can be paid quite early, instead of maybe 6 months. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I want to say that I support the bill.
The Honorable Mune Fabian, member for Kangundo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to add my voice on this bill. The Kenya Insurance Depositor Corporation not only said to give security to the depositors, but to give invitation to treat to the customers to be able to approach the bank and deposit their money. From the beginning, I know the honorable member, the good faith was to give a solution to Section 28 to be able to know how depositors can be given their value when the liquidation happens. But, Honorable Speaker, the way this bill has been drafted, it has given this way it was. If you see some question which you'll ask yourself, Section 28 of high DC was supposed to show the amount payable to the customers when we have issues of the bank has been closed or the circle has been closed. That time it gave 100,000. Now today we are just putting the amount higher to 1 million. Why do we give the exact amount? We are forgetting tomorrow there are somebody who will come with a consideration of 2 million, another person 5 million. So the drafter of this bill, I've been asking my question sometimes, honorable members, they have a good idea, but some bills here are not drafted to serve the purpose of today. Tomorrow again we'll come up with this bill to say we raise the amount to 2 million. The purpose for this bill was to give the aggregate amount, very smart in English laws. They bring English laws where that they don't want to pay. Is this bill going to indemnify our customers in the bank when they deposit this money? This bill is not going to give the purpose of indemnification. Doing discrimination again to some classes. We should not make laws which are discriminating people. So there is class here left. We should make laws which attract everybody, including the one bob, whatever the name you use, the billionaire in the street. So we should laws which they are giving the competitive fairness. Again, this bill is going against the competitive laws because it's specifying one class and specifying amount. So it's not going to give the right indemnification it's supposed for insurance. If you see this country, not only insurance about depositors, when you have a road accident, there is what we call assessor values. Insurance, when they want you to insure their car, when they want to insure your house, they will bring assessor which giving very huge amount. But when they start paying that, they say that now this is not the market value of today. What happened when you are taking that insurance? So it's also the high time we need to corner insurance companies. They are really misusing our Kenyan citizen. You go via a value of a car of 8 million. When the accident comes, they tell you there is what to call off market. Did I get my money from off market or I gave you original money? So these are one of the questions we need to drive insurance companies to do their work accordingly as when they receive the customers.
Fabian, you've been caught up by time. You have still 6 minutes to contribute. You will have that time when this matter is again set down for consideration on the order paper. And therefore, honorable members, at 2:30 p.m.